last time we talked about what is Nexus and basics of Nexus administration, right? So we also talked about, what is a proxy repository, what is a hosted repository. So we'll also see this during our demo today. But before that, let's understand how to, install Nexus as a system service and also as a container. Okay. So you can run Nexus as system service, Docker container, Kubernetes pod, through Helm charts. Okay. And for running as a system service, you have some prerequisites. So you need dedicated operating system account, to run all your Nexus processes. Okay. In fact, if you run Nexus as a Docker container, inside that also Nexus process runs with a Nexus user. Okay. And since Nexus is based on Java, you need at least Java 8 or later. And the minimum 4 VCPs and 4 GB RAM is required. So that's the reason we will at least take T2 medium instance in AWS. Nexus runs on port 81. So this has to be opened in the security group. Okay. And Nexus by default, the Nexus open source uses inbuilt database, which is not that secure. So we need to also make sure that we set up external database for Nexus to store its data. Okay, but external databases only work with pro versions of Nexus. Okay, so we won't see this part. Okay, so how do you run Nexus as a services? You first download the OSS package, you extract it, and you will have Nexus binary and all. Okay, but in order to run Nexus as system service, you need a service file. So that's the reason we will create a Nexus service, and then we'll point the service to the Nexus binary. Okay, and then we'll use systemctl start Nexus to start the Nexus service, and then we'll access Nexus on port 8081. Okay, so default username and password will be auto generated. Okay, so we will see that as well. Okay, so I have this complete documentation for Nexus. So if you want to learn more about Nexus repository manager, that is version 3, you can use any of these links. So for the system requirements, this is the link. Okay, to download. So this is the link. Okay, and inside the Docker image, you can simply search for Sonatype. Then it will give you this Nexus 3 link. Okay, so you have the complete Docker run command also with volumes. Okay, and integration with Jenkins also we'll see probably tomorrow. For integration with Jenkins, we need to download this Nexus platform plugin. Okay, and there is one more plugin called config file plugin that will be used for Maven and Nexus integration. Okay, that also we will see. And for cloud deployments, like using Helm charts to deploy Nexus to Kubernetes cluster, so you have the complete Helm charts and all its details in this link. Okay. So I'll also go through the documentation once. Okay, so it is help.sonatype.com/Nexus repo 3. So you can select your Nexus product. So we are using Nexus repository 3, right? So on the left hand side, you'll have various options. Like for the product information, you'll have download release notes, pro features. Okay, so planning your installation, how you want to install, Nexus. Okay, so like Nexus can be installed as a system service. Okay, so you need to go to run as service, and you can also configure Nexus to use external Postgres database by following this link, but it only supports Nexus Pro version. Okay, you can also deploy a standalone instance or deploy multiple Nexus instances, that is HA deployment, right? And yeah, so I can go to this installation method. You can see you can run it on Unix, Windows. Okay, you can install with Docker, and you can also set up in AWS using CloudFormation templates. In OpenShift, you will get Nexus as an OpenShift operator as well. Okay, so there is also cloud deployments. I'll just click on this link. Okay, Helm chart. So this is the Helm chart for Nexus. Okay, I think it will be in the integrations part. Let's go to the integration parts. and yeah, cloud deployments. So inside the cloud deployments, you have the Helm chart. Okay, AWS Helm chart for Sonatype Nexus repository deployment. Clear, guys? And now coming to the product information, you can just see the release notes. System requirements is one thing. So if I click on the system requirements, you'll have the whole list of requirements, for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Okay, it clearly says you need a dedicated user account. Okay, so we will see that as well. And then you need to, once you download the Nexus, you need to create this service file, and then you need to push it into etc systemd system. Okay, I'll show that as well. And then Nexus requires Java 8 or more. Okay, but in case if you're running as a container, Java is already installed in that container, so you will not have any issues. Okay, and then coming to the CPU, minimum 4 and recommended is 8 plus, but it all depends upon how many members currently use Nexus and all. Okay, you can see here for small organizations you need at least 8 CPUs and 8 GB RAM. For medium, like for repositories less than 50 or 200 GB of storage. Okay, so for large and very large, you need at least 32 CPU and 64 GB RAM. Got it? So there are other requirements as well. You can go through this. And for the database requirements, okay, so by default, it uses internal database. But for high availability and for the prod deployments, you need to use external Postgres database. Okay. So way to configure that and all, I'll show it in the configurations once, but we will not configure it. Okay. And coming to the blob storage. Okay. Basically you can use local storage for storing all your data, or you can use NFS, AWS, EBS, EFS, S3. Okay, so all three these are supported types. Okay, clear, guys? Any questions? Hello. So what we'll do is first let's quickly create an EC2 instance for our Nexus installation. Okay, so I'll call it as something like Nexus class. Okay, so you can use any instance. I'm selecting Linux 2, that is 2022 AMI. Instance type, you need to definitely go for T2 medium. Okay, and key pair, I'm selecting the one which I already has. Otherwise, you can create one. So currently, I'm not modifying any security group. We'll see that later. Okay, so let's simply launch the instance. Okay, and now I'll go back to the installation methods and I'll go to run as service. Okay, so for run as service, first you need to have Java, and then you need to have the package downloaded, Nexus package downloaded. Okay, and then you need to create a dedicated Linux user. Okay, so in this case, we'll be creating Nexus as the username. Okay, and then yeah, so if you're using systemd as init system, you need to create the system service file, and then you need to simply enable and start it. Okay, clear, guys? And also once you create a user Nexus, you need to go to bin directory of Nexus installation and edit this Nexus RC file and set Nexus run as user set to Nexus. Okay, these are the things. Now let's go to the download part. Okay, let's go to the Nexus, and then you have the Unix archive. So I'll download this.
Do we need to install it in separate instance, or like can we use our existing Jenkins or something like ideally?
You can use, but it will load your existing Jenkins. But every instance should be separate, right? Every app should be separately deployed.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me connect to this instance directly in the browser itself. Okay. Let me become sudo. So this document which I'm going to share has all the instructions. Okay, so first thing is we need to have Java 8 installed. So I'm just copy pasting the instructions to download and install Java 8. So after that, what we can do is we can use wget, okay, to download the latest version. Okay, so here you'll have two links. Okay, the link which I shown here, it is dependent on the latest version number 3.62. But if you don't want to, see the latest number, okay, you always want to download the latest. Okay, you can follow the above link. So it will always point to the latest, URL. Okay, it is up to you. And we will cd into opt directory. Then only we will use wget to download Nexus package. Okay, so let me right click and copy this link. Okay, and then go to opt and then do wget. Okay, and then paste this link. Okay, so now we have Nexus downloaded. So let me extract it using tar. Okay, let's see the file system contents. Okay, so you'll have two folders that are extracted. One is Nexus 3. Okay, so this will have all configurations and binaries, and Sonatype work, it is for storing all your data. Okay, so what we can do is we can basically rename that Nexus 3 folder to something Nexus, so that it is easier to write it in some of the configurations. So let me just to rename that Nexus-3 folder, which is extracted, to simply Nexus, or you can say Nexus 3, anything. Okay, now you have Nexus, which is the directory that has binaries and configurations, and this is Sonatype work. Okay, so let me show the Nexus folder contents. Okay, so you have bin, okay, and etc, that will have all the Nexus configurations. Okay, so bin, it will have the binary of Nexus. So if I do ls-l on bin directory, this is the Nexus binary. And if you want Nexus to anyways, let me go inside and okay, so let me just cat on this Nexus VM options. Okay, so here you'll have various VM options. Okay, so since you are using Java, so if you want to add any Java related configurations related to VM, you can add it. And also, if you look clearly here, see here we have the data, the data that is set to Sonatype work / Nexus 3. Okay, this path is already existing, and the logs are stored inside this location. Okay, so if you want to change this directory, like where Nexus stores the data and logs, you can actually edit this file. Okay, and once you edit, basically you need to restart Nexus service. That is one thing. And if you check the other files, okay, so like nexus.rc. Okay, so here you'll have run as user, which is not set to any user. Okay, so we will also set this once we create the Nexus user. Okay, so what is the next thing we need to do is we need to first create this Nexus user and set some password, and then we will give this Nexus user, okay, a permission to run any command on the Linux host with root permissions without entering his password. Okay, so we'll do vi sudo and add this entry, and then whatever folders that we have extracted and renamed, that is Nexus and Sonatype work, we'll make sure that they are owned by the Nexus user that we created. Clear, guys?
Yes, Vikram.
Okay, so first let me add the user Nexus and then change the password of the user Nexus. So I'll enter the password as the same Nexus. Okay. And the other thing is we need to go to vi sudo, and then we need to add this entry that says Nexus user can run any command with the root privileges. So you can add it anywhere. Okay. But, I prefer to, so why it is displaying like this. Okay. It is displaying, it is not displaying properly. So what I will do is I'll simply echo that line. Okay. So I will simply echo this line into etc sudo's file. Okay. Got it, guys? Then if I just cat etc sudo's file. Okay. So you will see this. Okay. And then once this is done, so what is the other thing we need to do is we need to run these two commands to change the permissions of the Nexus and Sonatype work folders. Okay, that we have in OPT. Okay, so let me just do it. And then once this is done, as I already said, so in the nexus.rc options, okay, inside the bin directory, I think I need to connect it, connect from, mobile XTOM. It is not displaying properly. Okay. So let's do it from mobile XTOM once. Okay. So I've already configured the username and SSH key, whatever I have. So it will log in into our Nexus. Okay. So inside /opt Nexus bin directory. So there is this nexus.rc file. Okay. So you need to edit it and say Nexus as run Nexus as user Nexus. Okay. Just save this file. After that, we need to create this service file. Okay. As I already said, if you want to increase the VM options or change the default data and log directory, you can simply go to nexus.vm options. Clear? Clear,
Yes,
guys? And also, so currently we are in bin directory. So if you go to etc directory of Nexus installation, you have this Nexus default.properties. Okay, so by default, Nexus runs on 8081. In case if you want to run it on a different port number, you can edit this port. Okay, and then you can restart Nexus. Got it? So after that, what we need to do? So we need to, basically create this service file. Okay, so under etc systemd system, you will create another file known as nexus.service. Okay, and the content should be like this. Okay, so here the start and start options are pointing to opt nexus bin. You have the Nexus binary there. So to this Nexus binary, you'll be passing start and stop commands. Okay, so that's the reason why we have start and stop set through this service file. Okay, so let me create this service file with that content. Okay, so this is done. Just save it. So once you save it, after you save it, you can simply run systemctl enable Nexus, after that start Nexus, status Nexus, and all those commands, right? So systemctl start Nexus. Okay, and also we will enable Nexus to start at the boot time. Okay, and then let's see the status. Okay, so started Nexus. So now Nexus runs on port 81. So we need to definitely open that port. Okay, so I'll go to security settings of this VM. and I'll click on the security group that is being used. Okay, and add the inbound rules. Okay, so inbound rule, add rule, custom TCP. So I'll open all the ports from 8081 to 8085. I'll tell you why I'm opening all the ports. Okay, because when we create Docker repositories, that might use 8081. Okay, after 8081, sorry, it might use 8082. Okay, 8081 is for the Nexus UI. Okay, so that's the reason why I am also opening the rest of the ports. So now save the rules. Okay, got it? So outbound rules, anyways, it allows all traffic. Inbound, we are allowing 8081 to 8085 and SSH port 22. Okay, so now let me go to the instance. Okay, take its public IP address and then simply enter 8081 after the IP address. So your Nexus should start. Okay. So here you'll have an option to sign in. Okay. So I'm clicking on sign in. So the username is admin and the password is under the OPT work directory, Nexus 3 folder. There is a default password called admin.password. Okay. So let's CAD this file and get that password. Okay. So this is the whole password. Okay. And then it will prompt you to change it in the setup wizard. Okay. So let's enter the new password. Okay. And then disable anonymous access and then simply finish. Okay. Clear, guys?
Yes. Yes, Vikram.
Okay.
Vikram, suppose we need to deploy this through Helm charts. We need to do all these manual steps.
Yeah, so in case of Helm charts, yeah, I mean, in the Helm, they'll directly give the, inside the Helm charts, they will directly print the admin and the password information, right? You don't have to cat and do all that stuff. Okay, so it will automatically handle all the steps for you. Okay, so now you have two tabs. Okay, so one is the browse contents tab and the other one is the administration tab. Okay, so if you click on this administration, okay, so here you'll see all the repositories that you created. I mean, not all the repository you create. So this is basically from here you can create the repositories, modify the repositories. Blob stores. So by default, it is using your local, disk to store the space. Okay, as we already discussed, we can also use EBS, NFS, and all those. Okay, and the routing rules. So these are the custom routing rules. Anyways, we will not see this. Coming to the security. Okay, as we already discussed, we have roles, privileges, users, anonymous access inside Nexus. Okay, so if you click on users, currently there are only two. So one is the anonymous user and the other is the admin user that we have. Okay, if you see admin user, okay, so currently he has this NX admin role. Okay, this is a role. And if you go back to the anonymous user, so he has anonymous role. Okay, so what are these roles? So roles are like collection of privileges. Okay, if you go to roles, okay, so currently there are only two roles, NX admin role and NX anonymous role. Okay, if you see the NX admin role, so he has all the permissions. All the permissions, is indicated with NX all. Okay, if you want to see individual permissions, let's say I want to give only read permission to the Docker repository. Okay, for a large group of people. So what I have to do is I have to have a privilege and then I will create a role and assign that privilege to that role. And then I'll assign roles to the individuals. Okay. If you click on privileges, you will have various privileges. Okay. So you can create fine grained control. Let's say I want a privilege that will allow me to, simply add new users, let's say. Okay, so now add new users to this what do you say, Nexus repository. Probably I have some automation script, so whenever I ask it to add a new user, it will add the user, but here it will only add the user. But if I say it to delete it, it won't delete it because it is not having that privilege, right? So how do you find that kind of privileges? If you go to NX user create. Okay, so what is this privilege? So this privilege will only create or read users inside Nexus. Okay, see, if I create a user, okay, let's say I'll create a user, or let's say I'll create a role first. Okay, so what is this role is, let's say this role is for Jenkins. Okay, and the role name also is for Jenkins. So this, what this role does is, so this will create users in Nexus. Okay, so this is just that role. Okay, so now how will I add that privilege? What all privileges I can use? Okay, so here, okay, so let me go and edit it again. Here you'll have NX all. NX all means it will give all privileges to that role. Now I want to only give it users create and read role. So users create and read. Okay, so this is the role. Got it? Understood? This role has these two privileges now. Okay, now I'll click on save. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll now create a user. Okay, so this user is a local user. So this name of the user is also Jenkins, let's say. Okay, Jenkins user. So first name, last name, I'll create Jenkins at the rate of, let's say, gmail.com. So password. Okay. And then what role I will assign to this. So status, you need to activate this user. What role I'll give is whatever Jenkins role I created, I need to send it to the granted part. Okay, and click on create. Now this user Jenkins has this Jenkins role, and Jenkins role has the privileges to only create and which one? Read.
Read and
Okay.
create.
So what
Yeah.
I'll do is I'll simply sign out from my admin account. Okay, and I'll simply click on sign in again. Okay, so this time I'll use the Jenkins account. Okay, so now if you see, I cannot do anything. Okay, the reason why I cannot do anything is, can anyone say?
Only you have read access, right?
Only I have read and create access.
Yeah.
Read and create. Okay. Okay, I think the GUI access and also I don't have. Okay, so that's why I cannot even modify it. Okay, so I can just see my user account, that too only this account. Okay, so let me see if I can add more privileges. Okay, so for this I don't have to modify anything at the user level. Okay, all I have to do is I have to go to the role that I created. Then here I need to add some more roles. Okay, so let me go to the users. Okay, NX users all. Okay, so if you use NX users all, this will give you all the permissions related to the NX user. Okay, similarly for for Docker, for for LDAP. Okay, so you have multiple permissions. Let's say, what if I have to give him all the read permissions to all the repositories, okay, that I create? Okay, then you can see here this privilege. Okay, so that is NX repository admin. Okay, so we are not saying which repository and all. Okay, we are simply giving it read permissions to all. Okay, got it? So these are all the privileges. Clear, guys?
Yes, Vikram.
Okay. And then these are the users. These are the privileges that we already discussed. You can in fact create a combination of privileges, okay, by clicking on create privilege. And if you want to connect to an external LDAP, you can also configure it from here. Okay, you can click on create connection and then anonymous access. So currently we have disabled anonymous access. Okay. So we can also enable it. Okay. So in order to do in order to allow anonymous access, we need to check this box. Okay, and click on just save. Okay, so now anonymous access is also allowed. Okay, and coming to the cleanup policies, you can also clean up some unused artifacts within this repository by clicking on cleanup policy. Okay, so you can uh, give some name to the cleanup policy and what all formats you wanted to clean up. Let's say I wanted to clean up all the Docker repositories. Okay, so you can say component age. Okay, so if it is less than the last usage day is less than some 100 days, or component usage. Okay, so depending upon your requirement, you can select your criteria. Okay, so that is a cleanup policy, and you can click on save. And then that cleanup policy, you need to assign it to the repository. Otherwise, this cleanup policy makes no sense. Okay, so first let me show you that. So this is for the support. Okay, so you can see the logs. Okay, audit logs, Nexus log, the outbound request log. Support JIP. What is the support JIP is? In case, let's say you have premium support and you're experiencing some issues with the Nexus, and you want to you approached the support and they asked you to send some information related to your Nexus repository. Okay, so you can click on the support JIP, and then you can select what all things you want to include as part of that archive, and then you can create this zip file, and then you can send it to the support team. Okay, so they'll upload that into their portals. Maybe they have their own tools to see the information. Okay, and this is the system information in case if someone asks you which version of Nexus you are running, which edition you are running, which build number. Okay, um, and then information about your Nexus repository installation. Okay, on what port, anything related to Nexus, you can find it here. Okay, so that is for the support part. Now coming to the system, so here you can use system APIs. Okay, so if you want to configure email, SMTP server details, you can do it. Licensing, okay, some common cron jobs. Okay, so how many nodes you currently have. Okay, so all these things you can do it. So if you click on API, so basically it opens a Swagger UI. Okay, so from here also you can access Nexus. Okay, so but this we will see in some time. So first let's create some repositories. Okay, so in the administration tab, if you go to the repositories, so I already have repositories. Okay, so repositories can be hosted, proxy, and group, right? So can someone say what is the difference quickly?
If within the organization we call hosted, if it's coming from internet,
Yeah. So basically how Nexus works is it can either store the artifacts or it can, proxy the artifacts, right? Okay, so what is the meaning of this? So let's say this is your Nexus. Okay, so internally, okay, you can store the artifacts. Okay, so let's say this is your internal, organization. So this is your Nexus installation. So now user can store the artifacts within Nexus. Okay, so for that, we need to create a repository. That repository, we call it as hosted repository. Okay, because we are hosting the artifacts. Hosted repository can be Maven, Docker, Helm, which means depending upon the artifact type we are storing, we need to create that hosted repository. Now the other repository is, okay, so let's say Nexus doesn't have that information. Okay, so this user requires a Docker image, the Docker image of Nginx. Now currently I don't have this image. I need to go to the public Docker Hub to pull it. But directly you will not have access to the public internet, right? Okay, so what you have to do? Okay, so no one is allowed to directly, I mean, this user particularly doesn't have access to pull the image from Docker Hub. Only Nexus has that, privilege. So only through Nexus only someone can go out. Okay. So we already discussed this. Now, in this case, what I'll do is I'll create another type of repository known as proxy. Okay. So this proxy repository is always connected to some external repository. Okay. So external, central repository or public repository. Okay. So proxy repository of type Docker should have a URL to the Docker Hub. Okay. So now what I will do is, if I have to store some, private artifacts that I created within the organization, so I'll use this hosted. But if I need something from the internet, let's say Nginx or something, okay, so I have to go to this proxy repository. Now, what proxy repository basically does is, so before proxying the request to the external site, it will see whether that Nginx is already downloaded or it is there in the cache. If it is not there, that request will go out and then that response will come to the Nexus. So what Nexus will do is it will store in the cache. Okay. So next time, if other user, reaches out to proxy repository to download Nexus, that request will not go out because it is already cached. Okay. Got it?
Vikram, I have a question. So instead of every time checking and going out and getting, if it is not there, we will go to the external repository, okay, Docker Hub, and get that image. Can we store it in the local repository?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. No, so this is cached into Nexus, and also it is
Okay.
downloaded into the user, right?
Oh yeah, but
Okay.
cache may be cleared, right?
No, cache
But
in the sense it will be there. Okay,
oh,
cache it
okay.
won't be
It's
clear.
in
It
our
is
local repository.
Nexus. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Got it.
Okay. And also I cannot ask this user, to use two URLs. Okay. Like one to push your artifact into hosted repository, another URL to go to proxy. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. So what I will do is I'll create a group repository. Group doesn't have any configurations or anything apart from grouping the repositories. So it will usually group hosted and proxy of same type. Okay. So now we have a group for hosted and proxy. There is a common group URL. So now if this user wants to store or get any information, he will only use this group URL. Now group decides whether if it is a new artifact that is being stored or if it is an artifact that it is not having with it. Okay, let's say this user is trying to pull, let's say, Ubuntu image. Okay, so it reaches the group URL. So first what group does is it will see whether someone already pushed it into the hosted repository or not. If it is there, then it will serve. And next time, so if it is not there in hosted, it will check its cache. Okay, why it is checking the cache is, so let's say someone through proxy repository already pulled Ubuntu and it is there in the cache. Even if it is not there in the cache, then what it will do? It will use the proxy repository and it will go out. Got it?
Yes, Vikram. So for a user, it doesn't know like whether it is getting from the local
Yeah,
repository or the external repository.
correct.
Yeah.
Okay, he'll simply use the group URL. Okay, anyways, I'm going to prove that as well. Clear? Okay, so this is about hosted and proxy. So if you see, we already have Maven Central, which is of type proxy. Okay, Maven public, and Maven actually supports two type of hosted. That is, you can host Maven release repository and Maven snapshot dependencies, both dependencies. That's why you have Maven. Under hosted, you have two types of repositories under hosted. Okay, so one is they are using for releases, one they are using for snapshot. Okay, and one is group. That group will have both proxy and hosted. Now this is the proxy repository. If you click on proxy repository, okay, since anyone reaching this proxy repository should be redirected to the external remote location, that's why you will see the remote URL here. Okay, and if you go to this group repository and check the repositories that are part of this group, you can see proxy and both of the hosted repositories are part of this group. Clear? Clear, yes? So let me delete all this. Okay, so I don't want, I will create from scratch. Okay, so let me delete all this. Okay. Any questions? Guys, any questions?
No, we are good. I'm good.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, just a second, guys. I have used some naming conventions. I'm just seeing what are the conventions.
Vikram, initially we created a user, right? During the
Hmm.
installation, Nexus user. What happened to that user?
So that is a system Linux user.
Oh,
That
okay.
is
For
not
just
the,
installation purpose.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the basic Nexus administration part. Okay. So now what we'll do is we'll start creating the repositories. Okay. So we will say Maven. Yeah, Maven. Let's start with Maven hosted. So here I'll say Maven. This is hosted, but I'll also say this will host only snapshot dependencies. Okay. But anyways, we will discuss about this why snapshot and all again in Maven in some time. Okay, so I think it's better to create at that time. Okay. So this is the Nexus administration part. Any questions on this? Okay.
Ideally, Nexus point out to the proxy VM, right? So those settings would be here only.
No. So that is an internal configuration. Okay. So that
Okay.
server is different, right? The proxy server details. But of course, you can also configure it here. Okay, in the
Bikram, suppose we need to host this repository in the Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah.
Then what we'll need to do? We can go for Helm charts, right?
You can go for Helm charts, yes.
So whatever manual tasks we have done, like user configuration and enable, so these things needs to be done, or it will simply start.
And see, whatever we have done in the environment, right? But if you're running Nexus as a Kubernetes pod, what is the environment? It is the pod.
Yes.
Okay, that is the container image. That's the environment for it. So inside that container image, when they actually create that container image, so they already take care about all this, like having the Java dependency, having this additional user dependency. All these
Okay,
are
got
already
it.
taken care of.
So you're talking
Okay.
about the database that needs to be attached. So
Correct.
there should be some kind of default database, right?
Yeah. So internally it will, if you see here in the system, not system support and system information, you can see the default blob store. Okay. So let me, somewhere you'll have the default blob. Okay. Or let me search for database. I think that is also not shown here. You can, depending upon this working directory, okay, you will know whether it is a local path or it is an external path. Okay. I think I cannot see that information here. Okay. So there you have to connect to external databases. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, now someone was asking about the proxy, right? If you go to this HTTP part under system, here you'll have the proxy settings. Got it?
Proxy
Vikram,
for
why
the
this?
Sorry? I can't hear you properly.
Yes. Yeah. It's
Your
like
voice is,
your voice is breaking still.
storage. The storage is called.
your voice is still breaking.
Can you hear me better? Can you?
No.
Okay, I'm typing it.
Sorry, I can't hear you properly.
So Vikram, this external settings, right? Proxy settings. This is for Docker Hub external repository
No, this is for
settings.
the whole Nexus. So
Yeah, I
say
typed in the
Oh,
chart.
okay, if Nexus can't reach internet directory, it has to be redirected through a proxy server internally
oh,
available in the
okay,
organization.
okay.
So that proxy server details, and if you want to authenticate with the proxy server, what username and password, those details
Okay.
I'm seeing.
Okay.
It says why it is called as a blob storage, because it is kind of a file system, right? It stores in the form of blocks. It is not object store. Okay, so we are not storing images, videos, and all those. Okay, so it stores in the form of files, and it will store in the block, right? That's the reason. Blob stores. Okay, so currently we don't have any blob store. It is the default blob store. Okay, you can create a blob store from this, like S3, the file store. Okay, so like this. Okay, so this is about Nexus being run as a service. Now we will see how to run Nexus as a Docker container. It is again easy. Okay, so we need to have Docker installed, and then if you go to this link, Docker Hub link, there also you'll find all the instructions for running Nexus as a Docker container. Okay, so this is the image, sonatype / Nexus 3 Docker run -d. The Nexus runs on port 8081 internally, so you can expose it on a different port. Okay, and then this is the name of the container, the image that the container should run. Okay, and if you want to persist the data, you can create a volume. Okay, that can be a named volume, or it can be a Docker volume. Okay, in case if you're using Docker volume, first you need to create a volume using Docker volume create. The name of the volume is Nexus data, and then you need to map that volume Nexus data into Nexus home directory. Okay, so internally the Nexus container takes this Nexus -data at the root / Nexus data as the data directory of Nexus. So you need to map your volume to that directory. That's it. Okay, so we already have this T2 medium instance, but we don't have Docker installed. So let me quickly install Docker as well in this, and then use systemctl start Docker. Okay, so after that, what we will do, we will create this Docker volume, and then simply run Docker. But my 8081 port is already occupied. Okay, so that's the reason why I'll simply say for the port mapping 8085. Okay, and or let's say simply 80. I'll open 80 port anyways, and then 8081 of the container, and the name of the container is Nexus. The volume mapping -v is the volume mapping. So meanwhile, let's go to the instance and open port 80 as well in the inbound rules. Okay, do Docker ps and do Docker logs -f, and the name of the container is Nexus. Okay, so Nexus is still starting. Okay, it started. Now we will use the VM IP colon 80 port, okay, to access Nexus. Okay, I think it went into the stopped state due to the memory issues, guys. Okay, I know it is mostly due to so for this what I'll do is I'll simply stop the system service, Nexus service I'm running. Okay, and try to start the Nexus container which is stopped. Okay, because we are running both Nexus, right? Two instances of Nexus, correct? So it can load the system. Okay. Clear, guys? Again, the same process. Okay, you will create a new user and all that. Clear, guys? Okay, so let me delete this container because it will simply load. So I'll simply force delete it. So docker rm-f and then Nexus. Okay. And then I will also prune the volume. Got it? So let's start our Nexus back using systemctl start Nexus. Okay, and parallelly let me also remove. Okay, Docker I won't remove because I might require Docker for the next session. Okay, but you guys understood, right, how to run Nexus as a system service and also as a Docker container.